Maybe y'all like a little junk in the trunk, but today's tight end video isn't about the volume, it's all about the efficiency. Yo, Headliner Nation, today is the final video in my volume versus efficiency series, and we're covering the tight ends. If you missed the first part of this video, you can check it out on the channel last week, Volume Monsters Tight Ends. But we got a ton to cover today, so we need to hop into the action right away, and we're gonna kick it off looking at catch percentage first. Big Bobby Tonyan didn't have a ton of volume last year, but he was definitely catching it when it came his way. But seeing Dallas Goedert up here is definitely something that I love, because I do know that his volume should be fine this season, even with guys like AJ Brown and Devontae Smith. And we'll see if Hayden Hurst can keep up his catch percentage, moving from a guy like Joey Burrow to rookie Bryce Young. Again, no surprise that we find Dallas Goedert so high on the list. Typically, when I've done these efficiency videos, he does really well in all these areas. But same thing for George Kittle. Normally, he does very well in efficiency. But check out my guys Hunter Henry and Juwan Johnson. Finishing near the top yards per target, I really hope that continues this season. I expect Hunter Henry to get even more work this year. Bill O'Brien is probably going to run more two tight end sets, and Hunter Henry already has the time with Mac Jones. Juwan Johnson, there are a ton of weapons in New Orleans, but this guy is going to be a big play threat and a big red zone threat. Kyle Pitts and Greg Dulcich near the top of yards per reception, and hopefully Kyle Pitts can figure it out. He's way too talented to continue to put up mediocre seasons. Hopefully with a super strong run game with Bijan Robinson and Drake London there, it takes some pressure off and Desmond Ridder can find him more often this year. Greg Dulcich started off well, but then completely disappeared towards the end of the season. So we have to wonder what to expect from him this coming year, given, again, how many weapons there will be around him. Maybe there won't be enough volume for Dulcich, but as long as we can get big efficiency numbers like this, if we can get even decent targets and more consistent play, this is a guy that we can start. I always love looking at yards after the catch per reception. It really shows me the guys that are putting together big plays after the catch, and David Njoku coming in at number 5 is no surprise. But for 2023, we have to hope that Deshaun Watson looks his way a little bit more often. When he was with Jacoby Brissett, he was one of the main targets. But then when they switched to Deshaun Watson after his suspension, he kind of transformed into really only a red zone threat, and he didn't receive those looks anymore. One name that I want to point out as well, down on the bottom of this list, is Mark Andrews. And it's kind of odd to see him that far down, but I do think that these efficiency numbers get better for him in 2023. Even if he doesn't have as much volume, the efficiency could end up being a lot better because he's got better weapons around him. All right, points per snap, no surprise to see a guy like Travis Kelce at the top of this list. Then George Kittle and Mark Andrews right after him. And again, just talked about Andrews a second ago, but with George Kittle, we're going to talk about him quite a bit here in just a minute. Also, don't let the fact that Isaiah Likely is 5th in this category coerce you into drafting him this year. As long as Mark Andrews is there, Isaiah Likely is going to be nothing but a dream for dynasty owners. He's good, but they don't run enough two tight end sets, and he certainly is not overtaking Mark Andrews. All right, points per touch, George Kittle, Juwan Johnson all the way back up here. Didn't receive a lot of targets last year, but had a lot of touchdowns, which is going to increase this number for him. Mike Gesicki also higher up on this list because, again, he didn't receive many targets and he didn't really do much last year. But because he had so few volume, his numbers are a little inflated right now. Dawson Knox and Cole Kmet, two guys that had a decent time finding the end zone last year. And because, again, they didn't have a whole lot of volume, this number is propped up a little bit by those touchdowns. All right, here we go. We are going to run through this entire list of tight ends. I'm going to give you a little thought on each one of them, and then we're going to get on out of here. Don't forget, if you love deep diving knowledge like this, you have got to get our draft guide for 2023. And there's one guarantee I can make for you, this draft guide is going to be the best one that we have ever done. The link to pre-order yours now is down in the comments, and we're only a couple of weeks away from launching it on July 1st. Make sure you pre-order right now. George Kittle at the top is absolutely no surprise for me. He has always been an efficiency monster, but last year he really destroyed things once Brock Purdy took over. And if Brock Purdy is on track to be the starter this year, that is great news for Kittle. Dallas Goedert moves up 15 spots from volume to efficiency. This guy is definitely a tight end that I will continue to target because he is the number 2 target behind A.J. Brown for Jalen Hurts. Do not let the fact that Devontae Smith had a good end of the season have you overlook how good Dallas Goedert was to begin the year. He will still be the number 2 target in front of Smith. I'm going to lock that in. Travis Kelce finishes high here in efficiency, and of course in volume, he's the tight end 1. There's no argument against that. Juwan Johnson jumps 9 spots from volume to efficiency. And again, part of it is because he scored so many touchdowns last year, but he's going to continue to be the main red zone threat. And what I'm hoping for this season with maybe a healthy Michael Thomas is that Juwan Johnson is going to be left on some one-on-one coverage a lot. He's going to beat that one-on-one coverage. So even if the volume isn't there, he's going to have some big games. Evan Ingram finishing a little bit higher in efficiency did catch me off guard. And because he's going to be losing potential volume with now Calvin Ridley being there, it's going to be important for him to keep this up. Hunter Henry jumping 18 spots in efficiency. I absolutely love it because I love Hunter Henry. Bill O'Brien, run more 2 tight end sets this year and make sure Mac Jones is looking for Hunter Henry. He needs more looks because he could do this. David Njoku, pretty even, only drops 1 spot in efficiency, but hopefully he is a big part of this game plan this year. Again, adding Elijah Moore, even if he loses some volume, efficiency is going to be the key to being a reliable fantasy starter. Cole Kmet to me is going to be very touchdown dependent, kind of like he was last year. Adding DJ Moore does absolutely no good for his volume, but in terms of potential targets on this team, I do think between him and Justin Fields having that relationship, he could become the number 2 target if they start passing more. Dawson Knox is going to need a whole lot of efficiency because with Dalton Kincaid now playing in the slot, it's really going to torch Dawson Knox's value. Kind of surprised to see TJ Hawkinson fall 8 spots from the volume video, but that's okay. We know he's going to get a ton of volume. So even if he isn't as efficient as we would like, only a couple more touchdowns would help these numbers out. And if the volume is there, honestly, that's going to give us a really safe floor every week and why he's one of the top tight ends drafted. Noah Fant in Seattle, now that they've drafted JSN, I really think that he is going to become a non-viable fantasy starter and we can probably just kind of forget about him now. Greg Dulcich jumps 14 spots in efficiency, and really we got to see if he can keep that efficiency up over an entire season. He missed the first part of last year with an injury, had a couple of good games, and they completely disappeared. So I've got to see a full 2023 before I really buy into the guy. Mark Andrews drops 10 spots from volume, and again, we'll see what happens this year. Even though if he loses some volume with the addition of some key wide receivers, that could really help his efficiency. And if he's Lamar Jackson's number 1 target still, and an offense that's going to be a little bit more pass heavy, those two things offsetting each other may not be the worst. Gerald Everett for me is basically going to be a non-factor. If Mike Williams, Quentin Johnston, and Keenan Allen plus Austin Eckler are all healthy, all 4 of those guys should be targeted more than him. He really only helps out during injuries. Big Bobby Tonyan had 1 season of insane touchdowns from Aaron Rodgers. Unfortunately, I'm not buying into the guy. Austin Hooper has been a guy that fantasy owners have hoped would jump out and be a fantasy contributor, but unfortunately, outside of 1 year in Atlanta, he's been very up and down. The Muth drops 7 spots from volume, which again is due to the touchdowns last year. If he had scored more touchdowns, he would have finished a little bit higher on this list. I think he gets back to that this year in year 2 with Kenny Pickett. Mike Gesicki being in New England now, did Bill Belichick bring him in to be a serious contributor, or is he just bringing the Miami notebook with him so Bill can learn a little bit more about them? I do expect Gesicki Gesicki to be on the field a little bit more often because I do think Bill O'Brien is going to run more 2 tight end sets this year. It's good to see Kyle Pitts up 8 spots from volume, but honestly, given the short season that he had, these numbers, there isn't much to go off. As long as Mark Andrews is in town, Isaiah Likely isn't going to be any type of a contributor for us, but if Mark Andrews were to be injured, Isaiah Likely is one of the first guys we got to pick up off waivers. Dalton Schultz dropped 16 spots in efficiency. So if he is a tight end that is going to be predicated on volume, we really have to hope that this year, he's going to have to get some huge looks there in Houston with CJ Stroud. Hayden Hurst could become a safety blanket for Bryce Young in Carolina. If that happens, maybe the volume gets a little bit better, but we'll have to see if some of those unproven weapons around him can really step up in that offense to help make him a decent tight end in efficiency. I think people are a little too excited about Tyler Conklin, and we'll dive into him more this offseason, but really outside of a couple of big games last year, he didn't really do anything. Will that change with Aaron Rodgers? Tyler Higbee, tons of volume, and I could see him being the number 2 target again this season, right behind Cooper Kupp. So even if the efficiency isn't there, the floor should be there with his volume. Zach Ertz, we don't know when he'll even make it back this year, but when he does, he might be a popular waiver wire ad. Cade Otton, unfortunately, regardless of who's the quarterback, he's going to be overshadowed by Mike Evans and Chris Godwin. And then Logan Thomas, if the guy could stay healthy, he tends to have some good games, but staying healthy has been the key for him. Yo, Headliner Nation, I blasted through the rest of the list there of tight ends. Make sure you hit that like button for me and leave me a comment down below. Based on this list and this series that I've done, what tight ends outside of Travis Kelce do you really want to target in your draft? But for now, I'm going to get out of here. Peace out, Headliner Nation. Stay safe and healthy, and I'll catch you all in the next episode of the Fantasy Headliners.